Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, everyone. Happy Shochu'sday, number 125, coming to you live from Japan. I'm in Tokyo. Steven is in Fukuoka. Good morning, Steven. How you doing?
Good morning, Christopher. Coffee time. Is it really only 125? I feel like we've done hundreds of these.
I know it does feel like that. The official count is 125,
Yep.
a century and a quarter.
Yeah. We just recorded our 46th episode of the Japan Distilled podcast, which hopefully will be out later this week. Um, Pretty fun one. Uh, Apologies for the yet again delay. Uh, Life sometimes gets in the way, but it's
I'm
a
looking for the
it'll be a
banner. I'm looking
fun
for the
one.
banner. I'm looking for the banner. Where's the damn banner?
Uh, yep. We did a We don't have a new one out. We did. I guess we haven't actually talked about it. We did have an episode drop a couple of weeks ago with Tanuki Shochu from South Africa.
Oh, I don't know
Um,
if, yeah, we might not have talked about that.
I don't think we did because we were in Okinawa last week, which would have been the first uh, live stream since that episode dropped. So maybe we'll talk about that for a second.
Mm-hmm.
Um, an American and a South African carpool buddies decided to make sake, and once they had a saleable product, they realized it was illegal to make and sell sake in South Africa. So
Oops.
they distilled it and they made South Africa's first shochu on
There you
accident.
go.
And that became a commercial product that they're now selling and scaling up. And it's a pretty fun conversation that I had with them. We recorded that actually before all of our GI episodes, so it's been in the can for a while, but we finally released it. But really, and I think it tied in nicely with what our next episode will be. It wasn't even intentional when we did it, but toward the end of the Tanuki episode, we get into essentially terroir of spirits, talking about how they're starting to explore using uh, South African agricultural products to make shochu, because rice is not native or not grown to any great degree in South Africa, and so they made a rice shochu with imported rice. But they've started exploring using locally grown sweet potatoes and sorghum as potential ingredients for a future shochu. So it's pretty interesting conversation we had with them, and then so that we had already planned to do a terroir episode, which is what will come out hopefully later this week, where we talk about terroir and Japanese spirits. So
Sorghum is such an interesting choice. Every time I hear sorghum, all I can think of is baijiu.
yep, yeah, it'd be really interesting to see what a wet submerged fermentation with white koji and single pot distillation does to sorghum, and taste that side by side with some sorghum based baijiu.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yep.
I'm very interested to try that. Huh. I
Yep.
wonder if it'll ever come to Japan or head to the States or anywhere else in Africa or Europe.
I don't know. Just gotta. Well, you know what? They are planning a trip to Japan, so maybe they can bring us samples.
The mule us some over. That would be nice.
Yeah, I think they might be willing to do that. Uh, yeah. So it was a fun episode. I listened to it again recently as we were doing the edit, and it's a good conversation. They've got some interesting stories, and any of our listeners or viewers who are home brewers or have dreams of distilling, definitely some lessons to be learned from their experiences. So
Yeah.
definitely worth a listen.
Very
So
cool.
cool. Yeah, I'm recovered from Okinawa, at least physically, if not mentally.
Yeah.
And
Well,
it's a
that's
good
let
good
me.
trip though.
It was. If you joined our episode 124 last week, you will know that we were in Okinawa at that time. We were sat side by side next to each other on the first floor of, what was the name of that resort? Um, Up in
Zampo
Yomitan.
Misaki. Yep,
Yeah. Yep. And it was good. The third day, day three, was a lot of fun.
it was. I
Um,
mean, the whole tour ended up being quite a bit of fun. Um, and you can see pictures and videos from I think Melinda Joe and Phoebe Amoroso have given some social media love on the trip and things that we experienced that we talked about a little bit last week, and then We it was a three-day trip, and that was the morning of the third day, so we didn't really touch on that. But yeah, what's the quick recap of day one was the koji maker, right?
That's right.
And then
Koji
and then
maker, and then dinner and drinks
yep,
back in Naha. The koji maker
yep,
itself was up in Chatan.
yep. Yeah, and that was a really interesting to see. The first time I'd been at a koji maker, I think we talked about it a little bit. It's a really small operation. I think was what surprised me, because I
Mm-hmm.
think of distilleries, especially when you're doing shochu, you need a large footprint for all of those fermentation tanks because you have such long fermentations.
Uh-huh.
And koji doesn't need that kind of real estate for to make the seed, right? Make the powdered koji mold that's going to be used by the distilleries
Mm-hmm.
to make their drinks. So, and they work with a lot, right? 38 of the 47 distilleries in Okinawa use their koji. So it's
Yeah,
pretty cool to see.
it was. Yep. And they were very gracious and gracious to let us in there, not something they normally do. And then we went down south, back down south to Naha, the main city
Mhm.
near the airport, or that encompasses the airport. And we had, after checking in, we had dinner at a very good awamori izakaya.
Mhm.
We had their full, we had the dinner set, which took forever to roll out all of the courses,
Yep.
but I think was a good overview of Okinawan food culture.
Yep.
A bunch of the big hits. Maybe the only thing we didn't have, I don't know, did we get any umi budo, the sea grapes? I don't think we got it in
I
that
don't think so.
meal. That
Yeah,
might
and
have
there,
been
there
the
wasn't any.
one stereotypical dish that did not cross the
Yeah,
table.
there was tofuyo, but it was mixed into another dish, so it wasn't just having tofuyo by itself. That was
Right,
it.
it was tempura. Well, was it shiso tempura, or was it like
I think it
it was
was
yeah, and then it
with like
had
a
like
little
a
bit
little
of.
bit of a paste inside,
Yep.
like a little bit
Yep.
of a rub of the tofuyo. So you
Yep.
definitely got it, but it was almost sweeter than usual.
Yep. Yep.
Um, and then and we rafte and a bunch of the heavy hitters, and we shared a couple of pots of, or
Mhm.
karakara as they call them. Actually, I have one right here. Something along these lines of this is 180 mils, and you pour it into basically tiny little cups for each other,
Mhm.
because usually the aged awamori is going to be you know 40+% ABV, and it's nice and it's thick and it's unctuous and it's got very very deep layers, and we poured for each other.
Yep.
And
So
this is
you can pour it into my little
there you
guy.
go. Ready? Let's see if I can get.
There you go.
It's backwards. Okay, I don't know. I think I
Yeah.
poured it all over the floor.
Yeah. But
But
I mean, that's to give you an idea of the size of this. I mean, I don't have overly large hands, but I can hide it in two fingers, right?
yeah, and that would normally be called a choko
Hmm.
in Japan, but down south in Okinawa they call it a chibugwa, and
Yep.
this is a karakara, and
Yep.
it's called a karakara because it makes that sound when it's empty, because there's a little marble in there.
Yep.
And so we had a fun time with that. I think we had two of these, and then we
Hmm.
headed off to the famous Awamori Soko.
Yep. Which literally would be Awamori warehouse, and it's kind of a. Yep. And those are his custom karakara, which are
Yeah,
only
these
90 ml, right?
these are only 90, and
Yeah.
he pours very precious things into these, and it's very fun to watch him fill it, because you can see how
Yep.
thick the Awamori is. It's pretty
Yeah.
impressive.
And the way he pours it, it's almost like a sherry pour, right? It's like the classic sherry kind of thing. I
Yep.
think we probably made some video of that we can post on social, because it's a fun little trick that he does, because he's pouring into these tiny cups, right? And he's doing it
Yeah.
from height, and
Yep.
he's not spilling, so he's
He
good at his
gets up
job.
there pretty good, and then at the top he goes, tick, and he locks it off, and
Yeah.
doesn't never waste a drop. He's obviously done this before, but yeah, that was a good. It was a good night, and I was very pleased because all of our guests were. People have stereotypes of awamori. If you've run
Hmm.
into it anywhere else in the world, you've probably not had it contextualized correctly or described correctly, or you've probably not even run into very good product necessarily. Certainly not
Hmm.
stuff that has been aged for a long time. That's pretty rare to run into
Right.
on accident. And so we busted a bunch of stereotypes, I think, and everybody's like, "Wow, this stuff is so rich and so
Hmm.
interesting." So that was fun. And we have a question here before we break over into day 2 and a recap. And this is how many strains of Koji King? And at this particular place, they were referencing 3 different
Hmm.
strains of
Yep.
black Koji King.
Hmm. Yeah, they only make black, but then they do different strains that are focused on different, I guess, different properties of the what the koji is good at. So one that creates a lot of acidity to protect the fermentation, one that does a really good job at sacrificing the grains, right? Were the two
Right.
main ones that what they'll do is they'll blend to the specs of the distillery, so you can get the right balance for your fermentations in the hot, humid Okinawan environment. So really cool lesson on koji, and might be
Yeah.
time for another koji episode.
Yeah, we certainly it was an eye-opening experience for us, and just to, I mean, like Steven said, to get into it really is laboratory conditions. It's a
Hmm.
laboratory because they have to make sure that there's no zaking, as they say, or like unwanted bacteria, other microorganisms that get into the koji making process, because you unleash those in the right environment, whichever distillery it happens to be, and you could have an infection essentially
Hmm.
within the fermentation. So they're very careful. And again, we owe them a debt of gratitude for letting many of us in there at the same time. And it was funny once we got them talking about it. They just kind of forgot. They were just excited that somebody else was excited. So we were
Yeah.
in those clean rooms for quite a long time. I was like, shouldn't we be
Yep.
vacating this space? But hey, you guys are probably going to fumigate it after we leave anyway.
Oh, I have no doubt they better have, because I'm sure that some of us had natto within 24 or 48 hours of visiting without realizing that we were going to be in a koji, you know, clean space.
Yeah,
Um,
unfortunately the walls and there's a lot of stainless steel, so it's pretty
mhm.
easy to sterilize. But yeah,
Yeah,
Mark,
yeah,
thank you for the question over on YouTube. Very good question.
yeah,
Um, and if
yeah. I
we
guess,
can
yeah, go
go
ahead.
on to day 2, a
Yep, sure.
recap of day 2.
Yeah, day two was a trip. Where did we start? We started at the Bingata.
Yeah, that's right.
Yep. Yeah.
Bingata Studio.
Fascinating. Fascinating. Using traditional dyes, traditional fabrics, all hand painted. Um, I mean, the stencil was done with a cutout, and that gets painted on first, and then these artisans go behind and paint in each little section in the color it's supposed to be based on the head artist's vision for the fabric. And then each of those, I know we talked about this last week, but each of those artists then is responsible for a single color in the pattern, because you need that color to remain consistent throughout the entire very long length of fabric. And so if you had different artists all trying to paint yellow in the same shade, because they're hand mixing these dyes for each thing, right? And it takes potentially more than a day to paint one of them. So you need that same artist's eye all the way through. And I was watching, they'd even like shade the fabric from the light, the overhead light, to see that the color shading was remaining the same, both in light and in shade, right? So
Hmm.
it's really strong attention to detail in how they make that fabric. And I think as you said last week, it explains why it's so expensive,
Yeah,
because it's a
yeah.
really labor intensive process.
The first time I visited, and actually we got a tour from the gentleman who joined us at the very end,
Hmm.
and he was like, I don't own anything that I make. It's just way too expensive. I was like, what about, like, you take home a mistake or something? He's like, yeah, we just kind of we start over. They don't, they don't. There's no waste really.
Yeah,
So um,
I think.
yeah, these are big. The colors are so vibrant.
Hmm.
It's so fitting for the climate, the people, the culture of Okinawa. And so it's a really, like, these are joyful patterns. These are
Hmm.
really positive, and it's not a rainbow necessarily, but it really
Hmm.
is those types of hues.
Yep.
Really soft yellows and purples and blues and oranges, and everything in between.
Yep, yep. Really. And I think what surprised me, you had seen it before, so for me it was just surprised when they actually wash the fabric after all the painting is done, and the washing process actually removes the the hardened paint and leaves behind the dye, right? So it's sat long enough that the dyes have gotten into the fabric itself, and then what I thought was the finished product, when you wash it, the colors pop even more and become much more um, like much more elegant than what
Mm.
they look like when they have the paint on them, right? And that
Yeah,
that was something I just wasn't expecting. So that was it was almost like a plot twist
yeah,
in the production process. So that was really cool to see.
right. And then they go back again and they repaint right afterwards.
Yep,
So
yep, yeah.
it's a time intensive process, attention to detail. They're basically suspending these long bolts of fabric across the studio floor, probably maybe about 2.5, 3 feet above the ground, so that somebody on a rolly chair can have their lap underneath it and kind of bend over the top. And they usually use, they have two paintbrushes in their hands, something along the lines of like this and this,
Hmm.
right? And they one is for like adding color and the other one is for like spreading it around. And these little brushes are made of human hair. We learned later on when somebody asked the question, and and they just kind of roll down the line, probably a good 20, 30 meters of bolt, and they
Hmm.
fill it in as they go. Really, really, you just leave that place with a lot of respect for just the steady, slow process and the attention to detail and dedication to making it perfect every time. And
Hmm.
yeah, I will never be able to afford any garment made from that fabric. I don't think.
Right, right, right. No, it's pretty crazy. Um, yeah, and then
After
we had a
that, crazy
time
lunch,
capsule
right?
lunch.
Yep.
Yep, time capsule lunch. It felt like 1970s Honolulu in Okinawa, which was just silly, silly fun
Yep.
cocktails and big steaks and curry out of a cauldron.
Yeah. Cauldron curry. I've always got time for that. And then we moved on to, where did we go?
Miyazato. Miyazato.
Oh, that's right, Miyasato in nearby, not too far away from
Yep.
the Bingata place,
Hmm.
and had a great distillery tour. Miyasato is, of course, the maker of harusame and
Hmm.
all of the other related expressions of awamori, in a tiny old ass distillery with plants growing out of the roof, and just talk about time capsules. I mean, it really is kind of in the same state that it was
Hmm.
when they built it, around wartime, and
Yep.
or just after the war. And they make beautiful awamori. They don't make a lot of it. They can't make a lot of it, and they are very good at what they do. We had a nice little tasting in the back. There's the
What,
harusame.
what, one of my
Yeah,
treasures is this very special aged one. See, gorgeous, gorgeous packaging.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. That what? How old is that one? Is that the 10?
it's a 10. Yeah, 42% alcohol, 10 years old, and they don't do a lot of long age stuff at all. So
No,
it's always fun
yeah,
when you find their old stuff.
they do. That if you ever see harusame, just grab it, just buy it. If you come
I
across a
realize
bottle of it.
I have bottles of their stuff just littered around this office. It's one of my favorite awamori, and so I just, whenever I see them, fortunately Sumiyoshi Sumiyoshi liquor store here in Fukuoka carries their stuff pretty regularly, and so
Yeah,
I,
I have that knee jerk reaction as well. Also on the internet market or
Mhm.
Yahoo auctions, I tend to just grab whatever is available. So
This is maybe a fun expression of theirs to talk about.
it is. Yeah,
This
you're
is
right.
actually, it's called wa, so it's harusame wa, and it's only what, 15% alcohol.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, 15% alcohol, and they designed it to go with Japanese food. So washoku is where the wa comes from, and how they came up with this is a 20-year project. I think we talked a little bit about last week. We didn't have the bottle to share, where they would taste fermentations while tasting Japanese ingredients, food ingredients, and then they would stop the fermentation when they felt like the fermentation matched. They would distill it, and then they would try the spirit with the food ingredient. If it didn't match, they would start it over again. They'd make a new batch and another batch and another batch until they got the formula where they feel like this pairs with Japanese food. And so you're talking about soy sauce, miso, those kinds of ingredients that this goes with. And now they're working on yo, which would be the yoshoku, the Western food pairings. And so there where they're going to try to, I think he said, weren't they trying to pair it with like the rim of the fat on a piece of steak? Like that little edge of fat that gets so succulent, so delicious on a steak. That's the flavor he's trying to pair with.
Yeah.
It's so specific, right?
Yeah.
But pretty good idea.
I think they've actually released yo before.
Have they?
But they have.
Okay,
It's been on pause for a while, and
Gotcha.
they're working on it again.
Yeah.
Yeah. Obviously, it's hard to. Western food is pretty
Right.
fast. So.
Yeah. I mean, why isn't he pairing it with kale? Right.
Yeah, so that Vermonters have something to drink. Yeah, he's a thinker, that guy, Mr. Miyasato, and
Yeah.
the team has been in place for a long time, and they make really, really beautiful awamori.
Yeah. What was fun about this? He served it to us, I believe, with soda, right? And
Yeah.
basically bringing it down to 7% alcohol, and it held up.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of flavor at 15%.
Right, and it's also, I think, intended to be chilled. Actually, you know, put it in the fridge and then serve it in a wine glass or something that's going to hold that, you know, something tulipy that's going to hold the aroma. But yeah, that was a very good. It was a very nice tour. And then where did we have dinner that night?
We went to the Awamori pub in Yomitan. Like in the little.
Oh, that's right. We
driveway
went
up to the house.
The Monogatari. We trucked it all the way up north, and then we went to the Monogatari place, Awamori Monogatari, I think.
Yeah.
Right, that place was interesting. This is like a big all wood, long canteen table in the center, and then a couple of like four tops behind us, and then a long counter on the other side, and then the bar, which was an awamori bar, but there was nary a glass bottle in sight.
Yeah.
It was all clay pots.
It was all ceramics, yeah. And it was their serving pots, which they do the shitsugi, right? The Solaris system where they're refilling, and they only serve Zampa, because Zampa is the brand from the distillery near it's the only distillery in that part of Okinawa, and so they only serve the local stuff, but they're secondary aging it. So Zampa's a big boy. It's a huge brand.
It's Higa.
You find it everywhere, and yet when it's long aged, it's completely changing its character, right? So you get a very different expression than you would get in an izakaya in Tokyo, right? So it was fun to kind of go through the different expressions that they've been aging for a long time there at that place.
Yeah, and they had a lot of great vessels. I had a couple of glasses of beer. Each time the glass got better and better, and I was like, oh, this is how you get people to keep ordering more beer. So I just want to see what the next glass is. It starts off at a very high level and just keeps getting better from there.
It was like a lot of UQ glass at first.
It was and then it got
the local glass style,
and then it got clay. It moved into clay after that. Who knows where it was going to go next? And then the tokuri, the karakara, were also really interesting. We had two or three different shared little what do you call them? Carafes? They're like karakara. Yeah, call them karakara. But little kettle of them.
Yep.
And it was good. And you can get like I think we said. Did we say this last week? I think we did. Last week we said you can get a bottle keep there at 1.8 liters. Isn't that awesome? A 1.8 liter bottle keep, and they're going to put it into one of these pretty generous sized pots. But they tend to they're quite tall. They have a lot of the narrow ones, and they'll leave it on the shelf for you. So you won't have it's not a bottle keep. It's a pot keep, clay pot keep.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah. I haven't seen that before.
If I lived closer, I'd probably have one.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
a little bit of a hike.
it is. It's out there. It's definitely out
Yeah.
there. Zampa Cape is it's a destination. You're
Yep.
probably gonna want to stay there the night, as we did.
Yep. Yep.
And then day 3 finally. Jeez, took us 25 minutes. Sorry, Mark. And we are still on the Cape. We wake up in the morning. We do Shochu'sday last week, and then we're moving out. And we went to a glass blowing studio, which I have visited many different parts of the world. I have never participated in glass blowing in Japan, though. So what was that like?
Yeah, no, that was a lot of fun. It was actually quite nerve-wracking for me. I'd never done it before. And they're giving very clear instructions, but their instructions are completely in Japanese, and I understand most of it. And actually, I could watch some of the other people go through it before me. But once you're actually doing it, like, I didn't feel like I was doing anything right. Right?
Yeah.
I feel like other people are much more capable in their movements, in getting the right form and making the right.
Well, yeah, I mean, they
but
don't. There's no way you're gonna fail because they're basically doing everything for you. You feel like you're doing it, but you're not.
Yeah.
You could take
Right,
your hands
exactly.
off of the pole, and it's still gonna turn, right? So I was like,
Right,
you're
right.
supposed to turn the pole while you're blowing into it at exactly the right pace and pressure. But
Yeah.
I could tell. Wait, well, I'm not turning this thing. He's turning it. Okay.
Yeah, right. I think the only way you could get it to screw up is if you like sneezed really loudly unexpectedly and startled the guy who was helping.
Yeah, and he dropped it or something.
Then it could drop on the
you'd
floor
have
or
to start
something.
over. But
Yeah.
it is molten hot glass,
Yeah.
so yeah, you do have to be careful. And I was worried that it was going to be super hot because the first person who went, I think she overreacted to how hot it was. I was like, oh
Yeah.
wow, is it going to burn my face? No, it didn't. It was fine. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was a lot of fun, and I think everybody on the tour had a great time. And we all made our own awamori glass. So that will be shipped to us once they're finished pretty soon, I believe. And then we'll be able to, and then we'll send them off to wherever they're
I
supposed to
got
go.
a box.
Oh, maybe you already
And
received ours.
I
then.
did. Yeah, because I think yours and mine and a couple other people's were in my box. But I haven't opened them. I
Okay.
need to do that. I need to see what they look like because they were fun. You could choose the colors. You could choose the shape.
Yeah.
You could choose other decorative patterns, like if you wanted like the crackled glass look, or if you wanted the bubbles inside the glass. Like there were different methods by which you achieve these different effects in the glass, and everybody could customize their own,
Yeah.
choose their favorite color and their favorite effects.
So yeah, if you have an hour, I think it's worth it. I think it's
Absolutely.
And if you're ever down there and want to, it's those, you'll know if you've seen it before, the Okinawan glass, these especially awamori glasses and beer glasses, they're really colorful. They're beautiful. That's a great example right there.
Yeah, just happened to have my
and-
coffee in this morning.
No kidding.
Yeah.
And it's pretty cool if you can make one for your collection. One that you had a little bit to do with. Really, not a whole lot. You're just the hot air provider, really. And you don't really have to. You don't have to have lungs of steel or anything. It really does not. You don't have to have played the trumpet for half a lifetime in order to be able to do it. It's really not a whole lot of pressure. So even grandma could probably take part.
Yep. Yeah, this one actually, this is the studio I thought we were going to go to, because I'd gone to Okinawa earlier this year to do some research on different things we could do, and this studio actually uses they do offer classes. It's over in the Yomitan Pottery Village, and they make all of their glass from recycled glass.
That's very cool.
So all the old Coke bottles and awamori bottles and things that they can get their hands on, is what they're melting down and then turning into these glasses. And I think this coloring it's kind of like a purplish color. I think it's a blend of like brown glass and whatever colors they could get to get the glass this color.
Red and blue.
From melting them all down together. I don't know where you get red glass, but yeah. Anyway, it's and then it's got this nice kind of sand effect on it. Like I don't know exactly how they did that. That wasn't an option at the studio we went to, but it's
Huh.
what I like about the sand effect is it gives me grip.
Yeah. Right.
Right, it's not going to slip out of my hand.
I guess red glass comes from butchering a chicken with a bottle. I don't know.
Speaking
Anyway.
of which, if we can go back to the Awamori pub, we didn't order it, and I kind of regret it. They had goat blood stew on the menu, and I was really expecting
you were talking about that, and I did not know. I remember
Yeah,
that now.
because when I had been to that izakaya before, they had goat sashimi on the menu,
Mm.
which I would not have subjected anyone to. Having subjected myself to it, it was um, not something I need to experience again. Uh, it was a very old goat, very smelly goat, so chewy and smelly. But I was curious about the goat blood stew, and I thought honestly, I thought the foodies in the group were gonna jump at the opportunity to eat something like that,
And
and
they
none
were
of them
just.
did.
I
Nobody said,
can't
"Oh, that
remember what I was
sounds."
concentrating on at the time, but I did. I was
I
not
think
a
it was
part
your
of that
beer mug.
conversation. Maybe I
You
was. I
were
was.
you were
I was geeking out over the glass or something.
yeah.
But
No,
yeah, that
it was
was
funny because one of the other guests said, "Oh, this is like an Ecuadorian dish, but they make it with pig's blood." And I was like, "Oh, that's cool." And
interesting.
then so I was like,
And
"Yeah,
that
but why didn't
was
we order it? Like, when are we gonna have a chance to try that again?"
yeah, that was a mistake. We should have got it.
Yeah.
We
All right,
should
let's go
have
back.
tried it. Yeah, we can go back. Okay, we'll go back. We'll do it next March. Um, I'm, and then if we and then for flip back over to
Yep.
day 3, then it's lunchtime,
Yep.
and we're kind of short on time. We've overpacked the day. We did a good job of not overpacking days, but that was the one day where we probably had a little bit too much planned in there, and
Yep.
we needed a place to eat, and we'd scrambled, and of course we were like 5 or 6 people, so and we found this place. We called ahead. She's like, yeah, if you all don't mind sitting at the counter. And we're like, yeah, cool. And we show up, and it's like a studio apartment that's been converted, that's had a counter rammed into it. And it's a small studio apartment.
It's
And
tiny.
and she does a few different pasta dishes. She can do a couple different types of pizza. And she has good wine.
Yep.
And that kind of derailed the afternoon plans because we got in there. She already had customers. It took her a while to kind of take care of us. We wrote our own order on the notepad for her,
Yeah.
and then we figured out somebody was like, anybody want some wine? I was like, here, and then one of our group who really knows wine probably better than the rest of us, all of the other wine lovers, and looked at some of the wine bottles and was like, wait a second, what does she have? And so then it was like she reaches into this little countertop wine cooler, and like every red wine that she pulled out was kind of interesting, and we're like, what
Yeah.
the heck? And so we didn't have one bottle of wine. We had 2 bottles of wine with lunch. It was a 2-bottle lunch, and we had the food was all right, and
Yeah.
it was it was a little studio
We
apartment that had a balcony that looked out onto the water, so it was
Yeah.
kind of cool.
It
You
was,
know?
and it was funny though because we each ordered a pasta because that's kind of what she seems to specialize in, and they're all daily made pastas, and they were great. But then we also were like, oh, let's just add on a couple of pizzas, not realizing that
Right.
she's going to have to make each pizza by hand individually, and she only had one oven for one pizza because it was
So
such a
that was
tiny
another
place.
like 30 minutes, right? I
So we
think
took
at
the
least.
second pizza to go, and we ate it in the van.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that. We did, didn't we? That's funny.
Yep.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. That was just lucky. We did not
Yep.
pre-plan that. Our plans for lunch were not very responsibly
Organized. Yeah.
organized at all, but we figured it out. We called an audible, and it was a very lucky one. And then we had to kind of cancel the tentative afternoon thing and head back down into the city because we were going to Chuko Distillery, and that was
That's right.
something that we did not want to be late for, especially because we had flights afterwards. So Chuko Distillery, of course, makes a couple of products that are available in the States. One of them is their Chuko brand, and then the other one is Yokakoji. And they're a really interesting distillery in Tomigusuku that has worked very hard to revive, and I think this is their biggest claim to fame, to establish this type of pottery using the local clay that is what they use to age a lot of their all of their most expensive product. All of their premium products are aged in this clay, and it's called gusukuyaki. And apparently, the way that they tell it, the the clay is a little finicky. It's hard to work with, and it took them a really long time and a lot of invested resources to get the formula right. And Steven's holding one of their vessels right there. Is that a 1.8?
This is a 1.8. Yeah, this is
So
but it is heavy.
yeah, and they you can see it's unglazed, but they get scorched on one side, and they get these beautiful patterns from the kiln. The kilns are right
Yeah.
on the premises of the distillery, which is rare,
Yeah.
probably unprecedented, really.
Yeah, this is what it would look like if it wasn't for that scorching, but then they have directional flames actually inside of the kiln that kind of cook one side of it. It's really, really cool effect, and obviously lovely awamori. This is a 10-year that was
Yeah.
bottled in 2021, so it's got another year plus of age on it.
And
So,
in fact,
yeah.
this karakara that I held up before is also from
Oh, right. Yep.
Chuko, and you can see that it's also got some light scorching on it, and their signature kind of like scraped pattern. And they, this is
their more standard, right?
yeah, and that one's not
These you can
scorched,
actually,
right?
no, it's not. These you can find these around liquor stores in Japan because they're a decent size distillery,
I
and
have
this is
one
the
of those
most
right here.
common.
Yeah.
The most common pot you're gonna find. This actually doesn't contain awamori anymore.
Oh, did somebody drink it by accident?
It wasn't by accident, but when I finished it, rather than doing awamori shitsugi, I started doing soba shochu shitsugi just to see what would
okay.
happen.
Good,
And I've got soba shochu from Furusawa aging in
there.
here,
Oh,
and I
nice.
have an isho bean of refill to keep it going. And it's actually been in here about a year and a half, and it's evolving. It's kind of fun.
Cool.
To do experiments like that.
Yeah, I mean, and this is something that happens all over the place down in Okinawa. There's a bar that we went to maybe a couple of years ago now where he just half of what he does and everything that he's excited about, the barman, is secondary aging and blending, making his own blend. So he's got all these bottles around the bar with like 30% this, at 50% this, and 20% that. And so it's 3 different awamori mixed in, and he just ages it and then serves it. I'm not entirely sure how legal that is, honestly, but it's pretty cool that they are so. It's so much a part of the spirits culture down there that it makes total sense for them to do shitsugi on their own, whereas everyone else shows up as like, I'd like to try those 3 constituents on their own if that's cool, but they're just the way of approaching it is totally different.
Yeah, and I think it would take a lot more study to reach the point where I was confident enough to do that on my own. Especially when you're talking about some long-aged awamori that you're going to blend with something else, because that stuff is not affordable. Let's say.
Yeah, that's another
it's worth
thing.
it. It's worth it, but it's just not. It's a precious investment.
Absolutely. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that was very interesting. We had a great tasting there at the end, of course, with Shacho, and they do a lot of innovative stuff with their yeast. They have this proprietary mango yeast strain that they use in a lot of their products. They love to evoke fruity flavors in their awamori through temperature alterations in the fermentation and by using these house yeast strains. And it's just they're a really interesting, very passionate group of folks, and they give a good tour. Their aging warehouse is massive, made of wood, has this tiered shelving system for their homemade pots of awamori, and they have a pottery studio and kilns in the distillery. They have artisans who are there weekly to throw new pots. It's just an entirely different distillery. When you think about distilleries, you do not think about this aspect of it, and they've really put their backs into it, and they do it very well, and it adds value to their products.
Oh yeah, no question. And the president does a great tasting at his little bar. He likes to hold court when he's got guests, and
Make sure
this
that
is
you've
actually one
had
of their
food before you go. Yeah.
This is one of their chibugo. The one that I was holding up before is actually also from Chuko, and this is what he serves it to you in. And I mean, awamori, because of especially long aged, pot aged awamori, there's already so much oxidization that's happened that, but then it continues to evolve once it's exposed to more air, and so he'll be like, I'm going to pour this for you, taste it, put it down. I'm going to try you on some other things. We're going to go back to that. You try it 10 minutes later, 20 minutes later, and it's evolved continuously in the glass. And then after you finished it, he's like, all right, now put it aside. And then we go through some more of the tasting. And then he takes you back to that first cup. He's like, now smell it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the aroma is just off the charts.
Yeah.
Just the residual in the little cup. Because it's, again, being unglazed, it's got all these little nooks and crannies for this spirit to settle on and dissipate, to evaporate and leave all the fun stuff behind. And it's a fascinating experience walking through it with him. And I've done it several times, and I never get tired of it.
Yeah, great, really, really cool distillery. And
I always walk out of there with too much stuff.
Yeah, it's real easy to drop several $100s in there because the tasting room, or his little bar that he does tastings at, is in the middle of this. Just, all the walls are just covered in pot resting awamori of all different sizes, from 720, maybe even smaller than that, honestly, all the way up to several 5,400 milliliters and maybe even beyond.
They definitely go beyond that. They've got the restaurant size pots in there. There's a couple of them. And I think this was actually my cheapest escape in the last.
Only $250, maybe.
No, well, this time they made it clear to me that if I spent at least like $100 or $120, then I got free shipping back to the mainland. So I found a couple of extra bottles to throw in the box just to get it up to that price. Yeah. But I think the one that I showed you before, that tall guy, is, like I said, it's 10-year-old awamori, plus you're buying the ceramic. I think that was around $400 for that.
I got a 10 back there too.
Yeah, they're not cheap, but they're delicious.
Yep. Hats off to them.
What I actually picked up was a 10-year-old in the bottle, so that I can now start my shitsugi on this one, because I didn't have that. And that's why I haven't even opened this one yet, because I was waiting to be able to do the Solera and keep it full and happy with a new distillate. So anyway, just renewed my love for awamori and Okinawa generally the whole trip, and they finally have an awamori bar in the Naha airport.
Yeah, and that was our last stop. We headed over to the airport, and I was like, and I wasn't sure everybody was going to take us up on it, but I was like, once you check in, right around the back of domestic check-in for, I guess it's both domestic and international, honestly, for ANA, just headed to the there's like this little open atrium space, and right around the corner is this new awamori bar that's partially sponsored. I guess it's sponsored by the Awamori Makers Association, and they have a little bit from every distillery. And you can stand there before your flight, before you go through security, and have, you can have a drink, you can have many drinks, whatever suits your fancy. They have little snacks, and they also have draft beer.
Yeah, I think it should be called Chris's Bar, because you've been lobbying them for a long time to
I
have
doubt
a bar
that
in the airport.
I doubt I really had anything to do with it, but I did say it enough times that people were like, yeah, we're working on it, shut up. And so I think over the years, maybe I had tweaked enough people's ears about it that it was, there was a kind of a chorus of people like, we really probably should try and do this if it's affordable. And I have no idea how affordable that is, because it's prime real estate.
It is kind of like an odd-shaped space and not very big, so maybe they got a decent deal on it. Looks like it could be a kiosk to sell socks or something.
It's pretty narrow. It's a standing bar, just so folks know. You're not gonna be able to sit down there, but it's designed for you to spend 15-20 minutes.
Well, the other customer had, I think, 3 glasses of habushu before her flight, the old lady.
Maybe she's afraid of flying, so I don't know.
Habushu's the pit viper liqueur, for those who aren't familiar.
She's like, habushu? You want some habushu? I was like, no, I do not. I really do. I don't. No, never. Not.
And she was like, but it made me super energetic. Why don't you want habushu? She was very, very chatty.
Bouncing off the walls in the plane too. Man.
Yeah.
Those those pit vipers are on roids when they're dunked in there or something. They do have, and they have some, like, it's not all stereotypical stuff. They have some decent bottles. You can buy bottles there too. They have arguably some
Oh, right.
better
Yep.
stuff available than if you go down into the gift shops on one floor below where security is. Some of their stuff is better than what's available down there. So
I
yeah,
did
it's an
splurge on
interesting
something
last stop.
in the gift shop.
Did you?
I got a 1986 awamori,
Oh, okay. Right. I saw that.
36 years
Yeah.
old. So
Right.
I've been eyeing it for like 3 or 4 years in the Naha airport, and it was still there. Said I think I'm taking that home. I just hope the seal is intact and not evaporated.
With that and whatever cork they have in there. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I haven't opened it yet. I've been actually a little afraid
Yeah. Yeah.
because that is a risk
but
sometimes with long age stuff.
it is indeed. All right. Well, this has turned into a long episode, and that actually is the end of the tour right there. We got on our various planes heading in various directions at assorted times, and we are now home and looking at another tour in a moment. Actually, later this week, we're headed south again with some more guests, so we'll have more to talk about. And don't forget, everybody, coming up November 1st, so this is next Tuesday, is International Honkaku Shochu and Awamori Day. So unfortunately, it'll be Shochu'sday over here when we do but it won't be Shochu'sday. It'll be Shochu'sday for you folks in the States when we chime in on Wednesday morning over here. So that'll be cool. And we
Might be doing that from the train station.
we might be. Actually, you know what? We will be at a distillery at 10 a.m. our time. So
Oh,
I'm not sure. Or we'll be like at it. Yeah, we might be at Kurume's train station at 10.
okay.
We'll see. We'll see how it works
Yep.
out. We'll
Might be a
try to
little bit
chime
of a-
in quickly. Yeah.
Yeah.
For that, if we remember. If we don't remember and you don't see us next Show Tuesday, please take photos of what you're drinking. Tag us on social, particularly on Twitter, where Steven is Japan Distilled? What do you want?
Japan Distilled. Yep.
Japan Distilled, or me at Chris Pellegrini. You could also maybe put it on stories because that's easy on Instagram. Again, Steven is Japan Distilled. I'm Christopher Pellegrini, almost full version of my name without the middle name. And then we can kind of amplify whatever you put up. But thank you very much for joining us again today for episode 125. And we'll be back hopefully next week for the ultimate Shochu'sday episode, November 1st. Yeah, Shochu Day. From both of us here in Japan to all of you out there around the world, a very hearty and heartfelt Kanpai, or Kari, as they say in Okinawa.
Kari Kanpai.